In Chapter 1, we went over the basics of the movie Yojimbo in the samurai film genre. In Chapter 2, we went over the spaghetti western films that employ the same conventions of the Yojimbo plot. And in the last chapter, we looked at a few of the crime films that did the same.
What about it?
Well, the further we go into the crime genre, the larger array of genre we're going to get. So while in the last chapter we were looking at the genre of gangster movies, not so much Scarface, but more like the Untouchables. Think 1930s Tommy guns and trench coats.
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
But the crime genre itself crosses over with a myriad of other genres. Like, most of these could have also been seen as action movies, or thrillers, or in some cases even comedies. But moving from samurai films to spaghetti western films to gangster films, it seemed like the next logical progression would be to catch up the genre to the modern day and simply gather all of these under the broad banner of crime. And since we started Yojimbo in Japan, why don't we head back there and see how they're handling their own updated remake.
It is rumored that control of the drug traffic is behind this warfare, and that a vast fortune in heroin is at stake. We now know that mercenaries, professional killers, are seeking jobs with one gang or the other.
Karate Warriors from 1976 stars Sonny Chiba as our nameless anti-hero. Maybe now he's best known for Kill Bill, but Sonny Chiba is really the Street Fighter.
Hi there, and you are?
I'm a welcome wagon. It's nice to meet you, friend.
No, wrong Street Fighter. This was a live-action movie.
And I'm going to kick that son of a bitch Bison's ass so hard that the next Bison wannabe is gonna feel it.
Really, really wrong. I love that movie, but that is a completely different live-action Street Fighter altogether. Can we just stop? I'm talking about a gritty, violent crime movie that stars Sonny Chiba, in which there are a trilogy of films. It's also referenced by Tarantino in True Romance, amongst many other roles in his career.
What are we gonna see?
A Sonny Chiba triple feature. The Street Fighter, Return of the Street Fighter, and Sister Street Fighter.
I think Karate Warriors was something in the area of Street Fighter meets Yojimbo kind of concept. Sonny plays the same basic tough guy in Japan in a contemporary setting with a gang war as the backdrop.
Intense rivalry between the two most vicious and powerful gangs in the city has just erupted into open warfare.
Now, right at the start, he drags this injured man to a doctor who kind of gives him a lowdown on who the different various players are in this gang war, functioning essentially as the innkeeper in Yojimbo, or Fistful of Dollars, or the bartender in Last Man Standing.
I thought that you belonged to Higa's gang.
Who's Higa? A mobster, a killer. He heads one of the gangs trying to take over the city, and his brother Nishi heads the other gang. They kill each other for control. They can both go straight to hell. There's nothing but trouble for them.
And in this way, there are plenty of Yojimbo plot moments that we can see, including another beatdown for our hero. But there's also an actual samurai featured in the plot that he's in conflict with, even though this takes place in the 1970s.
Forgive me, but now you are being truly ridiculous.
I'm not making it up. I mean, an actual living samurai in the 1970s, giving it sort of a bit of a Lupin the Third vibe. If you don't know Lupin the Third, it's an animated series from Japan about a thief, and one of his best friends that hangs out with him is Goemon Ishikawa, who is also a samurai living in modern day.
3代目石川五右衛門、古の大泥棒石川五右衛門の末裔、居合抜きの達人、何でも真っ二つにしちまう、怒らせると怖いよ。
And the inclusion of the samurai makes the movie feel a little bit like an intentional retooling of Zatoichi meets Yojimbo, at least in the sense that instead of one nameless hero, you have two, and they provide their own extra level of tension to the story, providing a successful new dynamic or dimension to this well-worn classic. I also think there's a little nod to Lone Wolf and Cub in here because the samurai has a son. And the film was released worldwide under the title Killing Fist and Child. So they were at least leaning into that idea with the marketing, in my opinion. This is an underappreciated gem for sure. For our second film on the list, we are going to stay in Japan for just a moment. Actually, it's like 26 years of moments. Our second modern Japanese nod to Yojimbo is called Gun Crazy, A Woman from Nowhere. It takes place at an army base in Okinawa run by crooks. I believe it's a made-for-TV movie with 3 sequels, which have nothing to do with Yojimbo, so we'll just be talking about this first episode. And seeing as all the episodes are not connected in any way, it kind of makes it a sort of Japanese Girls with Guns anthology series, which is a pretty cool idea, actually. A Woman from Nowhere is episode 1. Interestingly, Gun Crazy actually takes more from Sergio's Western than it does Kurosawa's Eastern. I mean, after 40 years and a dozen remakes of Yojimbo, there's just so much more for Gun Crazy to reference. Take the opening credits, for example, which have an animation and Western music playing very similar to Fistful of Dollars. We even get a scene where the bad guy is practicing shooting at a suit of armor. This may be not intentional, but we also get a scene that's similar to Last Man Standing at the start, where the gangsters come out and they shoot up his car so he can't leave the town, and something similar happens with our leading lady, where her motorcycle gets shot, and now she's forced to stick around as well.
Now you're free to go.
You want to do a report? Go down to the police, okay?
Sheriff's office is right over there in case you want to complain about anything.
There's also a little nod to Django as well, so when we do the beatdown scene, if you look in the background, you can see that there's these guys with red hoods. It's very similar to the Django villains.
Where is it? Tell me where you hid the money. Stop it!
And there's even a nod to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in the final graveyard shootout confrontation showdown scene. Sergio's scenes play very long in the cut, and I'd like to match them up and give you examples, but we'll just be knocked for copyrights if they're too long, so we'll just stick to a few quick looks.
I'll give you some of the money for your trouble.
I don't need your money.
Whatever you say. Look out!
And all of that is not to say that there aren't nods to Yojimbo beyond the basic story structure itself. Another very heavy influence on Gun Crazy outside of Yojimbo would be John Woo, and not just for the double-fisted gun scenes, but also the choreography of fight scenes, like the back-to-back shooting, aiming thing, the replacement killers type Chow Yun-Fat scene. There's even this guy doing this Chow Yun-Fat wannabe thing with the sunglasses and the fatigue jacket, and he looks just like he's out of A Better Tomorrow or something, and he's got to wear his sunglasses at night. And as a last point of interest for Gun Crazy, I think it's worth pointing out, in this entire series of 5 chapters that I'm doing, and all the remakes of Yojimbo, this is the only one where the hero is a woman, and that's worth noting, I think.
So now we know.
Our third iteration of Yojimbo in the modern crime genre is Fresh, released in 1994 as an American hood film. Now, I know that sounds corny when I say it, but I do so specifically meaning it's part of the genre called hood films. that arose in the 90s from hip-hop culture and Black and Latin American experiences and communities. Movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Above the Rim, and Juice from directors like Ernest Dickerson, John Singleton, to Spike Lee and the Hughes brothers, just to name a few.
So it's clear what I'm saying.
Fresh, a 12-year-old crack dealer whose father is a speed chess player, played by Samuel Jackson. The kid, whose nickname is Fresh, decides that he's going to manipulate the local capos into killing each other, Yojimbo style, using the concepts and strategy of chess as part of his plan. Hip-hop and chess have a fairly deep connection, and if we pull up the RZA's Wu-Tang manual here on page 94, he says, it's a strategic game that helps to calculate life, business, power moves. A good chess player can think 3 or 4 moves ahead. If you can do that, you can really manipulate a situation so that you're winning. Sound familiar?
Get the clock for a second, Michael. And what kind of player am I? Am I an offensive man or a defensive man? That's right, I'm neither. I play my opponent. If he likes to attack, I force him to defend himself. If he's a cautious man, I draw him into dangerous waters. See, you get so frustrated playing defensive positions, you make stupid moves you'd never make if you were thinking.
And that's exactly the way that Yojimbo has to move and strategize. Anyway, this movie is pretty great, but it's also pretty brutal. I can't play a lot of the scenes strictly just because of the language, F-bombs, N-bombs, and largely by the 12-year-old lead actors, which makes it as uncomfortable as I believe it's intended to be. The violence is pretty sparse, but when it hits hard.
Now you know better than always be in my face with this silly-ass nonsense.
And kids in movies as leads is a really tough call for me, but when it's done right, it can make the movie. The Professional, Phenomena, The Good Son. The little kid that plays Fresh might look adorable, but he is like the coldest gangster in all of these movies.
That stuff be stupid, cut, man. Jake should throw me a freebie and just on principle.
Yo, Kaswala, this is the dope. This is the dope. Live kicking jumbo crack. You don't like it, Bummer String being on Howard. Oh, Lenny, then you be ill on that stupid baking soda.
Beyond that, the movie is using the framework of the story pretty loosely, with the basic dynamic of the Yojimbo plot. But what makes the movie good is how they filled it in with real genuine characters and a real viewpoint. Not feeling the need to copy the original beat for beat the way they did with, say, Last Man Standing or even A Fistful of Dollars. And they had done that very successfully, but for this urban twist on Yojimbo, it works incredibly well.
Fine.
I know it seems counterintuitive to spend such little time on a movie that I'm saying is really, really great, but that's just the way this worked out. I can praise the cast and the performances more, but maybe instead we can do a quick recap with the director, because like in the last chapter, maybe it's not so much that Boaz Yakin has the resume to be a household name, but he certainly has the credits that make you wonder why he hasn't done more. Highlights for Boaz Yakin include writing the Dolph Lundgren Punisher. That sink in.
Wait, do not speak, do not move. There is further proof.
He also produced the first 2 Hostel movies, executive produced Now You See Me, Now You Don't, wrote and directed Fresh, wrote and directed Safe with Jason Statham, and the Disney football movie Remember the Titans. He also has some more recent credits that I haven't seen as well, maybe some more stuff for me to track down, including The Harder They Fall, which just came out in 2021. It has a fantastic cast: Delroy Lindo, Regina King, Idris Elba, just to name a few. Perfect timing after all of the westerns I watched for Chapter 2. But before I do that, we do have one last movie to mention. Our last entry into the crime genre, and maybe the most high profile in this chapter, is Lucky Number Slevin from 2007.
Better call Bukowski. Tell him there's a new face in town.
This is another example of a filmmaker taking the basic ideas of Yojimbo and how the plot works, and then completely reupholstering everything over the bones. The plot can get pretty convoluted. We still have 2 rival crime families at war. Slevin's in the middle. He gets beat up a lot. Lucy Liu is the lady and bringing most of the levity and light to what otherwise might just be Josh Hartnett getting punched in the face over and over again. Of course, some sadistic people might just like that.
And you know this, man?
Hartnett in this movie actually even gives us a reason that our mythic anti-hero has that supernatural calm and cool that they all display, deconstructing that mythology for us just a little bit.
I have ataraxia.
Ataraxia.
It's a condition characterized by freedom from worry or any other preoccupation, really.
It did pretty well financially, and it's an easy crowd pleaser. Comedy, romance, crime, in that post-Tarantino way that's just so agreeable when it's done well, plus a cast of names to boot. Hartnett and Lucy Liu we mentioned, but also Bruce Willis, Ben Kingsley, Morgan Freeman, Stanley Tucci, and cameos by Danny Aiello and Robert Forster.
Tell it to the one-legged man so he can bump it off down the road.
In the next chapter, we're going to bring you a gauntlet of all the remaining genres we haven't covered yet, and there are a bunch.